So I was thinking today about this really dumb thing that I would do when I was younger, where I would only make my role models fictional characters. And it was because whenever I learned about a historical figure or anything like that, I'd always learn something super bad about them. Like I'd always learn, like, for an example, take any of the founding fathers in America. Like I'd always learn, like, oh, like they founded America, cool, but like they had slaves, that's bad. And the lesson I took from that is, like, you can't admire anybody. Like I was like, no matter what, they're gonna do something that makes me think I can't look up to them. Of course, by the time I was, not till I was like 17, to be honest, did I develop the front half of my brain and go, oh, I can just like half of somebody. Like I don't need to like every single thing that somebody's ever done. Me saying the words, Steve Jobs is an inspiration doesn't mean I want to abandon a child. Like I don't know why it took me so long to develop that very simple critical thinking skill, but it did. But now, because of that, I have gained a ton of people that I really look up to over the years. Starting with fictional characters, Luffy from One Piece was my first ever role model, which is awesome, and the best thing that could ever happen to somebody, I think. Actually, was he? It might have been Goku. Either way, these guys were like my first role models ever. And I think that I actually do think that was a good thing, because I know like a lot of kids get into like I have friends who like Obama was their role model growing up, because it was like, oh, he's the president, he must be a great guy. And like I think that's awesome that for me it was just Luffy from One Piece, because I think that unironically gave me the best foundation of like, now I have great morals. That was weird that I just gassed myself up in my own morals, but I genuinely do believe it gave me, no, I think I do have great morals. Why would you have your own morals be bad? Like, wouldn't you change your morals then? No, but I think it gave me a good moral foundation as a kid that like just basically, for lack of a better term, a superhero was my role model. Nowadays though, it's a ton of different people. One of them that I mentioned already is Steve Jobs. And I do want to focus here on mostly what I think is good about these people today, as I do this thing here where I'm talking about people I am inspired by, because, I don't know, couldn't this just very easily devolve into 30 or 10 or 20 minutes of me going like, I like this guy, not because of that, not because of that, not because of that, and then it's just an awful watching experience? This could become that really fast. So I'm just going to talk about what I like about these people. Steve Jobs, just the way that he, so I don't think he's some visionary for thinking of like, what if we have a computer in everyone's home? Or saying, what if we did the iPhone? I don't. I get that people are like, that's something no one was thinking about in the 80s, but it'd be dishonest for me to say that that's something that I think is visionary, because I wasn't around in the 80s. I've grown up past the era of the Macintosh my whole life, and for a large portion of my life that I've been conscious, and really been observing the world around me, I've grown up in a post-iPhone era too. So to me, at this age now of like growing up and recording this on iPhones and using them my whole life, it totally makes sense to me that we're in an era like this. Like now it's a funny idea that anybody thought this wasn't a good idea, that anybody wasn't thinking like that. But what I think is so inspiring about him is just how he had this vision of like, we're gonna make these beautiful devices. Like we're gonna make things that are not the best, but the best to use. These are real things, not for hobbyists, but for people, and it's like a designed piece of tech. I think that's so cool how he stuck to that vision, because that, I think, is the braver part about things. That like, when everyone else was like, no, you gotta have a computer be this for nerds or anything like that, he was like, no, I'm not trying to make the best computer. I'm trying to make something that I think is elegant and beautiful. And I think sort of like that philosophy of like, I'm not trying to be the best thing ever. I'm not trying to, push the envelope in every regard. I just want to make a really great thing. I think that's awesome. I think that's also something that gets applied to things more than we think. And when is applied, it leads to some of the best stuff. You know what I mean? Like a great example of this is Andy Warhol didn't strive to be the best artist ever. He didn't want to be the best realistic painter or the best painter ever. He was just like, I'm going to do pop art. It's a certain set of curated elements, and I'm going to do that really well. And I think that's great. Speaking of Andy Warhol, that's definitely another one of my inspirations. He is somebody who I think is so interesting just because he's hard to articulate. Because I think part of the interest and the reason I look up to him is because of his mystique of like, to this day, nobody ever really knows what Warhol was thinking. I mean, there's huge groups of people today that are still like, Warhol was a fraud, or they're like, Warhol was just a giant piece of performance art, and nobody ever got it, that Andy Warhol was the piece of art, and all his paintings were just BS, right? Like, the fact that there's still so much discourse around him, I think is so interesting. One of the big things that I try and do in art that you would never know from the Paint&Talk series, it's me trying to learn to paint in front of you guys, that I try and do with like my real art that's not training stuff like this. I don't know why I'm saying training as if I'm Goku, but it's not stuff like this, is that I am a big believer that art is something that elicits a reaction, right? One of my core memories is something that I would want it to be its own Paint&Talk. You know, I don't want to go into the full story, but I made an art piece that a teacher absolutely despised. They hated, and they said, this is not art. And when I did that, knowing that like, I finally did something that elicited a reaction like that, that was the day I was like, okay, I'm an artist now. Like, now I can call myself an artist. And that was before I even knew all this stuff about Warhol, before I really got into him. You know, I always thought he was vaguely interesting as a kid, and I read like the Who Was Andy Warhol book when I was a lot younger, but I never really got into Warhol until after that. And I think that's what stuck out to him so much about me, was like, this wasn't some guy trying to be like, I want to make an art piece that's going to awe everybody. He said, I'm going to make them talk. And he did. I think that's so interesting. And that's a philosophy that I've carried to my life too, you know what I mean? That's something I've always said, and this is hugely narcissistic, so I can't believe I'm about to say it on the internet, but like, from the age I realized not everyone's gonna like me, I was like, okay, the best I can do is make sure they don't forget me then. You know what I mean? Of like, I'm going to make sure that I'm a real, full person with something interesting to talk about, even if I can't be liked by everybody. I want to be remembered, you know what I mean? You know, guy on YouTube wants to be special, call the New York Post, you know, of course that's the most shocking thing ever, right guys? But no, in all seriousness, that is something big that is very much encapsulated, I think, by Warhol. Like, I think he did a great job of that, of like, I'm going to make this stuff, and even if you don't like it, you're not gonna be able to look away. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum is Picasso for me. He's another person I hugely look up to. I think Picasso is awesome for almost the exact opposite reasons of Warhol, in that he made something that was genuinely undeniable. You know, he from a young age was amazing at painting and could paint. Oh my God, and when you look at the early Picassos, they are at a level that is similar to like master work. Very similar to what I'm doing here, of course. And I think what's so interesting is over his life of obviously not in a vacuum developing Cubism, but being able to make abstract art in a way that to this day, when you show a Picasso to somebody that says they hate modern art, they go, no, that one's good. That's the exception. Picasso, I get. And that's crazy to me, you know? I think it's almost a mystical quality about art that Picasso embodies, right? Of people have so many different interpretations of why something is good and why art is so amazing, whether it makes them feel something or however that may work. And Picasso is one of these artists where everybody just looks at him and goes, no, it's good. Whether people can articulate that or not. Like, people that like anything will go, no, Picasso is good. I see it. I get it. And I think that's so interesting because it almost brings out that mysticism of art of like, it's so hard to articulate what makes that so good though. Why him? Why not anybody else? How come if you show people, you know, a Cubist Duchamp, they're like, I don't like that, but they love the Picasso, even though they come from the same tradition, around the same time. Like, that's so interesting to me, and I think that's one of the things that's so great about art, is you'll never be able to break that down. I pray you won't, at least. Maybe someday they'll come up with some sort of science behind that with, you know, neuroscience or whatever. I hope not. I really hope they never do, because I think that's what's so great about it, is that we'll never know why he's undeniable. He just is. I think that's something that in general inspires me a lot, is when things are undeniable. And this kind of goes back to Warhol too, even though I said I like him because he is not trying to be the best thing ever. In a way, he still is undeniable because you can't deny him attention. You can't deny talking about Warhol or addressing Warhol. When you think of art in the, what year is the 1900s? What century is that? The 20th century, right. When you think of art in the 20th century, you can't help but think of Warhol. When you think of 60s pop culture in America, you can't help but think of Warhol. Like, when you mention his name, people still go, the soup can guy? No. And they can't help but talk about him. And in that way, he is undeniable, right? And I think that's a big repeated pattern in things that are so, I don't know, I guess inspirational to me, even though I feel like that's such a big word. That's a big pattern, is I like those undeniable things. I'm a big fan of, like, there's a big difference between number 1 and number 2. In that number 2 can be amazing, but they only got to number 2 because that's as high as they could get. Number 1 is only number 1 because there's no places above it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And I think that's something that inspires me, is when people can make it to that height of, like, no, this is the thing. Like, you can hate it, you can dislike it, you can do whatever when it comes to it, but you cannot deny it because it's there and it's real. I don't know why I'm saying it's real, as if there's any question of that. I think that's so cool. I think that's awesome because I feel like that's so hard to do. You know what I mean? Like, that's so... If I were to ask you how to make something good, you could really easily explain that to me. Like, you could be like, oh, something good is going to carry these qualities, it's going to be done in this way, you could do it by doing X, Y, and Z. When I ask you, how do I make something that's the best or undeniable? Nobody knows, because you got to do it. There's no way to theorize it. You can think about it all you want. You can, ponder and theorize and try and strategize something. Undeniable will still always just be undeniable. And I think that's why I have such an appeal to it, because it does have that level of mysticism, that level, almost, bringing it back to Steve Jobs, who I was talking about earlier. He did that, where it's like, the iPhone's not really the best, but it's undeniable. You know what I mean? Same with a lot of the stuff that he made. And I think that's something that's so cool to me. This painting's done, though. And I don't know how to talk about it. So the reason I'm kind of cutting this conversation short after only covering really 3 people plus Luffy from One Piece is because I want to talk a little bit of this painting as we finish up here. I'm trying to do another one of these skin, that sounds crazy, skin practices, but like using skin tones and over a sketch with an underwash. I think the last time I did this was not yesterday, not the day before that, but the day before that it would have been, right? So I was trying another one of these with one that was already done. It just didn't work as well, and I knew this was going to be one of the harder ones, so maybe I shouldn't have done it next. But, yeah, so I don't really... Like, it's hard for me to articulate what went wrong here, because I don't know what went wrong. This might really just be a practice makes perfect situation, where, like, I just need to make more of these until I can really get to the bottom of, like, what makes this... How do I get this to work? It's definitely not, like, abhorrent in terms of you know what you're looking at. This is clearly a face from a side profile, albeit a very incomplete face from a side profile. But I don't quite know how to bring this. This is something that I'm gonna struggle with as I get into this zone of, this level, I suppose, of Paint&Talk, where, like, I'm okay at blending things, I can get a little bit of structure down. I think the next hard thing is, how do I use push and pull from them? This is something I've heard people say, that oil painting is push and pull. You gotta push things in one direction where it's gonna be really clunky like this, and then you're gonna pull it back to refine it. How do I use that to get to a final product? That I have no idea of right now, and I think that's gonna be the next big thing that I gotta figure out. Either way, I do have to say, that coming here to episode 76, as I've been doing this long, I still think there's something amazing about the fact that, like, I would never have even imagined this when I first started. And in that regard, I have to remind myself, progress is good. Not where I wanted to be, though, which is why we're going to keep going for another 289 days. So, yeah, you guys get that idea, right? Go check it out over on Instagram, see a full write-up of it. Let me know if you enjoyed this talk. I was a little bit apprehensive to do it because I feel like it's something where it's not really a topic, it's only something I can relate to, but I also want to keep a balance of, like, I want to talk about me a little bit on the series, you know what I mean? Like, you guys are coming here to watch these, and I think that's amazing, and I think it's, on the one hand, could be selfish for me to talk about myself because maybe you just want to see the painting and talk about a topic. On the other hand, maybe you're like, I want to know a little bit about this guy because I'm hearing him talk about these topics every day, or maybe you just want me to shut up and learn me through the topics, you know what I mean? Like, figure out who I am through them. So let me know what you think about this. Would you want to see more of this kind of thing where I'm just like, these are people I look up to, or this is a story I was thinking about? Oh my god, I used to watch so many, I'm doing this actually, this isn't even a question now. I used to watch so many story times on YouTube as a kid, like Tana Mojo, that was my thing as a kid. Gabby Show too, she was a huge story time person. I think Bailey B was her name, where she was like this art YouTuber that would do story times while she drew. Totally doing that. And I'm gonna do the cheesy story time thing in parentheses too. I'm gonna do that for sure. But let me know. Do you like that? Do you like me just like being like, these are some things that inspire me, or this is a place that I went to that I want to talk about? Like, would you guys be cool with that, or is it more just, you know, keep it to the topics? Let me know in the comments below. Go check it out on the Instagram until then. And until tomorrow, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice. This has been Paint and Talk, episode 76. I'm here every morning painting and talking with you all.